Bon dia, Vacordia. Welcome, Eimear Burke here. Welcome to another Fireside chat. As usual, I will just start with the prayer for peace. Gomara Kaan ar fud na crinne, Gomara Kaan in our jaili agus in our jirha. Gonari linlan ar garmacha, Gomwich buikas jiv, Jeh Quivdaka is bird Quivdaka. May peace prevail on earth. May peace prevail in our homes and in our countries. May our missions be accomplished. We thank you, guardian spirits and guardian deities. For peace. As the fever of day calms towards twilight, may all that is strained in us come to ease. We pray for all who suffered violence today. May an unexpected serenity surprise them. For those who risk their lives each day for peace, may their hearts glimpse providence at the heart of history. That those who make riches from violence and war might hear in their dreams the cry of the lost. That we might see through our fear of each other a new vision to heal our fatal attraction to aggression. That those who enjoy the privilege of peace might not forget their tormented brothers and sisters. That the wolf might lie down with the lamb, that our swords be beaten into plowshares, and no hurt or harm be done anywhere along the holy mountain. With thanks to John O'Donoghue, Irish poet and philosopher. So it is lovely to be back here after being away last week. I was in Germany at the international gathering there up in the Eifel in the north part of Germany, close to the Belgian border. And it was an absolutely wonderful event. So just let me see where you're from. There's Hi Anne from Montreal, Crouch End. Hot and sunny London. I'm happy to say it's bright here. It was dull this morning. We have lovely weather here, not too hot. So I know those of you in Southern Europe are really struggling with high temperatures. Hi, Ava from Belgium. Tina, you're in Wales, lovely. John King, who was my guest last week or 2 weeks ago, from Richmond. Alan from Killaloe and Tipperary. Lincoln, the Netherlands, New Hampshire, Seattle. Clayton, California. Just lovely to see you all. And Washington. Wonderful. So there is no sound. Oh, you got it. Thank you, Marilee. You gave me right there for a minute. And hi, Marcella from Cork. So let me go introduce you to my guest this evening. We're going to the UK. And I'd like to introduce Jennifer O'Neill Kaan. Jennifer, you are so welcome.
Thank you so much, Eimear. It's amazing to be here.
So people will know from your accent that you're not English, that it's an Irish accent, yet you're living in England. So just where are you and what's your landscape like?
I'm in Sussex, in the kind of middle of Sussex, which is in the southeast of England. And I live in a beautiful landscape in the Ouse Valley. So looking out my window, we're in a dip kind of the valley. So I'm looking out at a lovely wooded hill that you really get a sense, of the seasons as they change. So it's a place that is amazing for lovely walks. It's also I'm here in this area of Sussex for the last 6 years, and I'm discovering more and more all of the kind of spiritual and kind of hidden aspects of it. One of the amazing members of the order, Heidi, lived here when she was little, and so when we moved in, she came and gave us a tour of all her favorite childhood places, and showed us, we'd been walking past it in that way you do, blind and not seeing what was there. And there's a white spring and a red spring, our very own little Glastonbury. There's ancient yew trees, and so it has that kind of feeling of a landscape, I think, that's quite charged. So that's great, especially when you live away from home, and you can have that sense of homesickness. So for me, it was a revelation to be able to connect to the Sussex landscape and find a way to feel part of that instead of always feeling in between.
The outsider.
I still feel like an outsider, but
So are you a member of a grove?
I am. I'm a member of the Anderida Grove, or Gorsted, and they also meet in an amazing landscape, which is Wilmington. So a really high place where there's the famous long man or woman of Wilmington, and we gather there on top of the hill with the long man kind of looking down at this broad, flat expanse of landscape. And that was kind of my introduction to Druidry. We joined the Anderida Grove before I'd signed up. Signed up sounds problematic, before I kind of found that path and committed to it. And, that was kind of terrifying because it was something I felt a call to, but also a lot of ambivalence around. And they were just amazing. It's such a powerful community run by Dave and Kerry, who just holds such a kind of charged space. It's wonderful. And then, to be on that landscape up in the hill, I think the first one I ever went to was at Lunasa. And then I remember at Samhain, there was this amazing ritual, talking about the cauldron and imagining peering into it. And at that moment, like this kind of mist came over and these like birds were circling. And it was really, when you hadn't either fully been aware of that or like opened yourself up to it, that was remarkable.
Oh, beautiful. So was it Heidi who introduced you to Anderida?
No, we looked it up. It was, as I think it always is, listening to these fireside chats as well, the kind of chain of serendipitous and synchronized events. We had been, Toby and I, who's my husband, was similarly interested in this path, and it'd been something I'd always kind of felt a call to, but not known a name for maybe. And then we went to a thing that was, I can't even remember the name of it, but it was basically connecting with the earth and walking on the earth. And Philip was speaking at it and some other people, and we'd kind of must have read a book or something. And when we went, we met some people and they were saying, oh, there's this and there's that. And did you know that in this area? And we just started kind of looking it up and decided to kind of take the leap and go to one of the Anderida gatherings, and the first kind of thing Dave said was, you're not the Daily Mail, are you? That's so that was, so I knew with that sense of humor immediately I was in the right place. So.
Brilliant. Yeah, because the first time I heard of you was David said that you had sung at one of their ceremonies, this haunting, amazing voice. And then I heard it when we first met at one of the gatherings when we were staying in Covenstead. And I know for everybody, she has an absolutely amazing voice and will be singing tonight for us. Not only is she a singer, but she writes her own songs and she does them for ceremonies, for the order as well. So we're in for a treat later. So actually, speaking of your writing of your songs, where do you get your imas or your awan for your songwriting? I mean, do you just sit with a keyboard or do you go out in nature or what do you do?
I am a notorious lifelong procrastinator. So one thing that I don't have is a rigorous creative discipline or spiritual discipline or any other discipline, sadly. But I think that's a good thing. I have to say that, because for me, I depend on and wait for those kind of little flashes. And so from just a creative point of view, I mean, I've always written since having children. That's almost impossible. So I decided that I would focus more on writing poetry and songs because my experience was that something would come into my head or I would be able to sit down and try and get into a space and kind of connect to it is Imas or Awan. It is definitely, for me, if I force it, it doesn't work. It has to kind of like allow myself to sit down and center and literally ask that kind of like, okay, I really want to connect to this now, or I have an idea, but so I rarely like edit things too much afterwards. Like there'll be some of that, but so when it's poetry, like that's been really useful. So some of my favorite poems that I've written recently were one was written at 2:00 in the morning in the dark on my phone when my child wouldn't stop crying through the night because of teething, and like so poetry is an amazing art form for that, and just that conduit for kind of pure emotion is something that obviously for poetry is great, but is very connected to Imas or to Awan as well. And then in songwriting, I guess obviously there's such a craft to that, so more thinking about it. And when I've been doing things for some rituals, that's such an amazing opportunity to do that. And also as a person who, as a procrastinator, has not get very far through the course. It's a way that I feel I can live bardness, bardship, bard, whatever the phrase for that is. So yeah.
Because we've asked you, or people, whoever's organising the ceremonies have said, will you?
Yeah.
And then I had asked you, and Stephanie had asked you to do one for the installation, or not for the confirmation. Well, it was for the installation, and then it became.
What was it? The confirmation of the installation of the
yes. Celebration of the confirmation of the installation. Anyway, but that, but you did it, and so what did you do? Did you say, okay, now I have a deadline, I have such and such date to do this?
You asked me at the last, maybe it was a winter time. It was 2.5 years ago. It was a long time ago, and we were sitting at a table.
To do it. We're giving you 6 months to do it because it was going to be for the.
It was going to be for the big one, yeah. And there were a lot of drinks had been imbibed, and
I don't know about other people. Yes, go on.
Me, I don't know legally then if that was a binding contract, but so I was honored, but also I was like, yeah, that's great, that's fine. And then I mean, it ruins my reputation to say how late I left it, but certainly I didn't start the next day. And but I guess the thing is that you start thinking about like the images are there, and they're kind of like building or germinating or whatever in your mind. So then when you come to the place where you can, I'm pretty ritualistic about it. I have a little writing shed, little Moroccan hut in my back garden, and I like kind of, I guess it's, and I would have done this before knowing it, but it's making a circle or making a sacred space, and I'll chime things and burn things and like really try and do it and block out children and the responsibilities, become unavailable for a while. So when you can do that, and then when I came down to really think about it, in the months coming up to it, I was thinking about like this notion of two paths or two different, like this idea that Druidry is many different kind of possible ways to walk the same path, and that lots of people can experience it in an entirely different way and bring such a different energy to it. And I was thinking of you and Philip and the way that I perceived that kind of difference, like the beauty in that to come from different places. And I had this image in my head that was just a fixed kind of idea of that notion of a new dawn, like, waiting for something in darkness and a new dawn. And I knew I wanted to use that. But then in that synchronicity way, not only was it 2 years waiting then in this darkness for this kind of new dawn thing, but also when Gabby and Paddy wrote the ceremony for it, without us realizing, that was the imagery that they were kind of using as well. So it completely, it really, Paddy Mooney, who does amazing.
Who says hello, by the way.
Oh, I can't see the comments. And with Gabby, so they'd sent over this. So I had written it obviously in time for when you needed it, like 2 years ago or whatever. And then I'd started it. I'd got like a verse and a chorus, and I was going to like do the last bit, quickly. And then that all happened. So there was the pause. But when Paddy sent it over, it was exactly around the same images and the same idea, which was amazing. And I had this idea of like the white and the gold, the silver, like playing with the colors. And I just really, by that stage, it had become an image that was fixed in my mind. I saw the idea of these two figures meeting in a woodland, like grove, and the passing over of a kind of crown in that like oak king, holly king kind of way. And, so I guess imbued by all of the stories and all the myths, like everything for me, the massive pull of Druidry is how centered it is in story. I know for you as well, obviously, as a singer and a harp player and a shanachie, but that idea of like these deep wells of inspiration that you can draw on and that just have this complete relevance, like season by season, eon by eon. I love that. I love that ancient and new aspect of it.
Because I remember when you first sent it to me, I just cried. I was so moved. I think maybe we were talking about, I know there's some people or their connection crashes. We're still fine. And then other people are good. So I don't know what that's, I think, people's individual connection. Would you like, given that we've been talking about it, would you like to sing the song?
Yes, I will. That's fine. Let me just find it. Yeah, I would love to do that. I should give a disclaimer that I am pretty hoarse because I am so engage with my local neighborhood over the weekend. That it was a raucous evening, so it's a little, the voice is suffering a bit, but it's fine. So, yep, sorry, let me just
to explain, this is the song you sang at the confirmation ceremony, which we had in the marquee in the Abbey, not the one on the tour, but that you led people in a chorus, a call and response song up on the tour. It was quite magical, absolutely.
Yeah, but you want the
one that was in the Abbey.
The one that was in the Abbey, exactly, yeah. So you just do your wonderful talking for 1 second. I'm going to find it. For some reason, this has just disappeared.
Anyway, I'm glad to see that people are, they've got good connections where there are many people who have saying that they're okay. So, so let me know when you're ready. Have you found it?
I have.
Okay. So as we say in Irish, or in Ireland, away lat.
So this is called Braco an Lei, which roughly translates as a new dawn's light, or the idea of kind of a dawn breaking. It goes like this. That's my cat in the background, sorry.
Cat's chorus is good too.
Yeah. Tus reina. Braco an Lei. Two paths in an ancient wood converge in moonlit grove. A new dawn's light creeps softly in and paints the circle gold. Hand in hand, two figures raise their faces to the light and feel the cycle of rebirth weave ripples through the night. Ooh. Now silken threads weave round the pair, between them spirit flowing, a blessing on both silvery gold and white and grey bestowing. Oro, oro, tus reina. Oro, oro, Braco an Lei. A blessing on his journey, his search for truth, his yearning for beauty, meaning, justice, his lightly carried learning. A blessing on her singing soul, her vision strong and true, as softly she walks ancient ways, weaves ancient words anew, weaves ancient words anew. A blessing on this moment where past and future meet, and both are held by sea and sky, by earth beneath their feet, by earth beneath their feet. Oro, oro, tus reina. Oro, oro, Braco an Lei. The grove itself is singing now. He lays his oak crown by. She twines it round with hawthorn and lifts it to the sky. She lifts it to the sky. The open gate is beckoning and dawn is pouring through. Blessed by the light, each takes their path. The day burns bright and new. The day burns bright and new. Oh, row to Srainua. Oh, row, Bracu. There you go.
Oh my goodness. You have me in tears again.
I love when people cry when I do stuff for them. It makes it feel worthwhile.
Yeah, absolutely. And Paddy says the cat should have been in Glastonbury.
The cat chorus, because we had a druid choir. So.
And then wonderful to hear it again and be able to take the word in the words beautifully sung. Somebody said shivers and angel wings. Beautiful, beautiful, wonderful. And actually the cat sounded really well.
She's a soprano, you know, she has very
well. I tell you, she's such
a surly and like contrary cat. It's only when it suits her. It's typical that it would be like at that exact moment. But, hey,
well, Liz Mack says outrageously beautiful, thank you. And then Gabby, hi Jen, gorgeous magical weaving of the new dawn. I have to honor the inspiration. The hour when the song came. Whoops, she's gone off of me. And let me get up here now.
Gabby, thank you. I know it would have been eloquent and beautiful.
When the song came from the great pool of wisdom and creativity to which there is perhaps no time constraints. As we humans may create constraints, how wonderful that Paddy was inspired 2 years later and all flows into into one river. Just absolutely beautiful.
Thank you, Gabby.
And then Pat Booker says, wonderful, gorgeous to hear it again and to be able to focus just on Jennifer. And actually, I think you make a really good point, Pat. I had heard it and read it many times, so I got that, and it was just lovely for us to listen to Jennifer and to really hear the words. Mm-hmm. So, and they're saying a wonderful voice, so beautiful. Oh, so you've got loads of fans here.
Thank you very much. Finally, fans.
You have fans anyway. I mean, you're a jazz singer, aren't you?
I am. I sing in a band called Cavo Jazz. We're trying to evoke kind of seedy underground cellars in Paris.
As in cave.
Cavo as in cave. But unfortunately, when you translate it into English, and in England, everyone says, you know, in kind of an English accent, Cavo, like a cave. And you're like, no. Like the fin de siècle. Think Oscar Wilde sipping absinthe in the cellar. That's like, yeah. But I think anything that has to be translated is perhaps problematic, but Cavo, yeah. We do a big range really of jazz and blues and soul and different bits and pieces. I'm always angling for more traditional jazz and standards and experimental stuff, but we play in Brighton, or have been playing in Brighton, actually at a big Irish bar, a great Irish music bar, so that kind of influences us playing like popular tunes reworked as jazz. But yeah, I definitely really love it.
Well, do you have another one for later on? Another one of those like reworked?
A few different, a few other bits I can sing for you. Yeah, already.
It's brilliant. We can have our own gig.
Yeah. We're coming for you, Dave. No, that's.
And Wolf Spirit Echo says, crisp and clear, transported through time. So. How long are you in the order? How long do I know you? About
Oscar is like 7.5. About 7 years, maybe something like that. 6 or 7 years. Yeah. I think that long.
So I know you said you're not very disciplined, but this isn't about being disciplined. No. But do you say you don't have a practice?
I don't have I do have a practice in the sense that. So spiritual practice, definitely the things that I think that being in nature, walking in the woods, the moon, like for me, that's like, so going outside at nighttime to see it and to be aware of it. So, okay, that is a practice, but I'm not like good in the sense of like, here's my altar that's properly done. And I will every morning make sure this happens, because my life at the moment is just a bit more beautifully chaotic. So yes. I mean, on the other hand, since being an OBOD and since finding the names for things that I had kind of felt, for me the practice is a deep sense of connection, like to those moments, to those places, and like I would always seek out I would always want to be in the woods or to go out in kind of quiet places, or but like being able to view that as a part of a spiritual practice is for me just such an illuminating experience, because certainly the way I was raised, that was a beautiful, lovely thing, but it was very separate to that. And to suggest that
considered secular, yeah,
absolutely, and even worse, the pagan word that certainly in Ireland where I'm from and when I grew up,
very heavily loaded word, yes.
Yeah, exactly. It has deep kind of connotations, and so and yet at the same time, so my practice is being rooted in that. I will often go to the woods and will mark the wheel of the year, and I love that because although that's something that in a sense you could say was different to the kind of faith system I grew up in, actually it was still there. We always talked about Baltana, and we would put flowers on the roof, and we always had Samhain. And obviously in Ireland, because it's connected to the names of months, and because there are saints that are thinly veiled representations of goddesses, so I was living it and doing it, but not kind of calling it that. And then in a way, and then just like that amazing kind of deep connection to nature. Also, I think that back to the kind of creativity, the Awen, but for me especially a strong connection to Bridget, and to that idea of that energy of the forge of creativity, and that notion of the power of the human voice, like that it can tell stories, but also that keening, that it deeply expresses grief, and it can be a transcendent experience. So whenever I would do anything like that, at any time at all that I need to feel a deep sense of connection, my practice will be tuning into the energy of Bridget, to that kind of and that sense that, like, for me, I guess also one of the things I love most about this path, and like in its broadest sense, not just within Druidry, but the celebration of the divine feminine, the idea that that's not like some crazy alternative thing, that it's so central, and it's like it's a reality that once you feel it and sense it, it's not something you have to kind of suggest as if it's surprising. I read a quotation the other day, it might have been Carol P. Christ, but I'm not sure, and she said that people always say God has no name, no gender, no face, until you dare to say goddess, or to suggest that God might be female. And then suddenly people get very angry about, this idea. And so I think that was also something that I felt. I studied theology at university in Dublin with English. And so I was always drawn to these stories and interested in it. But I kept coming up against this kind of very limited view of women in general, but especially female spirituality, the notion that passivity or receptiveness, which in itself can be a beautiful thing, but that was all, or that was, and that there was a conflict between that and any greater idea of kind of a feminine creative force. So that's important to me too. And I guess that is, I can't say that that's a daily practice, but nonetheless, it's there with me all the time, and it's there with me, especially through that connection to surrounding and creativity.
It is. Blake says, it took me a number of years to have a daily practice that had any structure, and even now there are periods, sort of goes on hiatus a week or so before I hop back on. I think we need different things at different times in life.
Absolutely.
And I know from having, because my children were young when I joined the order, and so my daughter was she was 18 months. So that's busy.
Yeah, that's Oscar was around. He was 1 or something. And so when I was thinking of knowing I'd be talking to you today, so I took my notebook that I have. I know we all have lots of lovely Druidry notebooks, and I went down to this. This is a lovely lake that's near. It almost looks like a kind of Nordic scene. There's giant kind of forested hill up behind it, and the lake is really peaceful and beautiful. And I just sat down there and read back through my notes on the Guernsey and on just like reflections, and actually. It's exactly that point that Blake says. It always has been there, but it's come in cycles. And those things, not only through having children or at work if it's busy, but surges of connection, surges of energy, and then fallow periods. And, and it was a lovely exercise to go back and to look at it again, because it made me realize that just because something isn't in the forefront, or you're not kind of, seeing the structure of it immediately, it doesn't mean that it's not there, because I guess you've laid the roots of it, and it's there, it's waiting to come out again. And like reading back, I'd forgotten about even different experiences, like through the course, like I won't go into them, but moments of connection and kind of visualization exercises that like were astounding, where you kind of thought, wow, this. So yeah, it's always there. But I definitely have that feeling now of, while everything else is going on, I think sometimes you get the sense of missing the rigor of, I'm working through this grade and I'm working in the practice. So for me now, that's a big call. And it starts as a kind of lovely nagging voice in my head that's like, come on now, like, what number are you on? Like, so there's, I think maybe it's time to go back to that. And similarly with writing, now that my little boy is going to be 3 tomorrow, so it's suddenly beginning to feel like I can carve out a bit more space. And every day, I'm working on trying to write the novel that I was meant to have had finished this year before I was 40, and that didn't happen. So it's released the deadline, but yeah.
Okay, because John King says there are seasons and everything, even spiritual practice. And Anne Beer says fallow period, so lovely, because leaving the land fallow for one season is so good for it to be more creative and productive later. And I think, Anne, you make a really, really important point that sometimes, you can be go, go, go. I'm a procrastinator. I've reframed that. I'm an incubator.
Yeah.
I used to give myself a hard time. But what I notice is that there's stuff going around in my head, like my head's a cauldron and spinning. And I need that time. I can't just sit down with a blank page or a blank anything and say, no, I'm off walking and stuff is coming and it's incubating. Yeah. So incubation is another word for procrastination.
I'm going to steal that. That is amazing. Yeah. And it's your time, like, because the idea of the cauldron, that really gives you the sense that it's your inner cauldron, and you don't need to be like in a space or at a writing workshop or saying, oh, I went to this, talk about spirituality. It's all the time your inner cauldron of imagination, of awe, and that is such a powerful thing. It's such a gift. I also love, in OBOD, the focus on the idea of creativity as a gift, as a divine thing that you can like tap into. I think that's a really beautiful idea. Instead of a system that would be threatened by that, or would say, oh, you're getting a bit big for yourself there, that kind of idea, or as if it's something that you should use in a utilitarian way, instead of seeing it as connected to something bigger than you. So
yeah. Well, Andrew King says, love this talk. I'm so behind on my course. Yes, Andrew.
You'll write down your numbers in the chat. That's right.
And Pat says, I don't procrastinate. I'm just very motivated by deadlines. Well, I am too, but I have to start way, way ahead. A lot of it, pressure helps me, but then there's a lot of incubation as well. Blake says, incubator, I like that, Eimear. I find in my life that go, go, go periods balance out the fallow periods to a sort of average speed in the end. Anyway, you make a very good point there. The cosmos has a way of finding balance, I think, so to speak. Yeah.
And I think, like you have reframed procrastination, I have definitely reframed that manic energy of the deadline that other people find stressful, but I actually thrive on that. And, as an English literature teacher, all the writers I admire, yes, often died early and were drug-addled, but we're also like in deeply these kind of bursts of creativity and this intensity. So I actually really enjoy that. Like, I know many members of my family and friends who are sickened by it, but hey, it's my cauldron.
Well, Pat says, never worry. I've been through them 3 or 4 times and I keep deciding to go again rather than write the Bardic Review. So, Andrew talking about being on time or being behind. It took me 7 years. It's taken other people much, much longer. Everything has its own time.
Yeah.
And actually, Ferdiad says, I don't think practice has to be daily. I think it has to be regular, as in when it's needed. Agree with you, Ferdiad. Compare it to eating and sleeping. Sometimes in our lives we need a lot of sleep, sometimes we just nap, sometimes we eat 3 meals a day at a set time, sometimes we snack or don't eat for a bit. Maybe we can look for a rhythm in our practices that works with our bodies and spirits, rather than trying to fit our bodies and spirits into a practice schedule. That, I think, is a very interesting point about finding a rhythm or a practice that works with our bodies and spirits rather than the other way around.
We're synchronizing, yeah. And I think that's where the Wheel of the Year is an amazing thing to connect to, because just like, to take the eating analogy, in the summer, you're not going to want to sit down to a heavy, whatever. Like, but similarly, there'll be different times in the cycle of the year that you will feel fizzing with the energy of early summer. And then at the same time, as the year moves towards its end, the necessity of looking inwards and maybe looking back. And so it is different. And if you were to rigidly impose upon that, oh, well, I must do my 45 minutes of whatever, it would be artificial. So yeah, I agree.
That's right. It needs to. My mother used to say this: "Don't do things against your will." Yeah, what she meant was, I want you to do it and do it with your will. But I was well, if it's not, I'm not going to do it then, because it's not with my will. She had her own frame on that. But the thing is, it's about being willing to do something rather than I need to.
Make a conscious choice that your yes is more powerful than your kind of no in that sense. Like that, it's you're getting into it. You know.
Now, Pat makes an interesting point as well. Practice is double-edged. When it's regular and habitual, it can be automatic and less wholehearted. Keeping it meaningful and reflective and cultivating the moments of spontaneity is a tricky balance. Absolutely.
Yeah.
I agree with you, Pat. I think so. Yeah.
Yeah. And spontaneity, that in itself, that's a gift. That's an amazing to be. And eventually, if you harness that, then that's a powerful energy. So, yeah.
That's right. And those magic moments, like you said, when you first went to Andera, it was that Samhain and it was looking in the cauldron and these birds. Those kind of things can never be planned. And that can be worth anything.
Absolutely. And I think for me, what I'm realizing is, and again, there's another crossover between the creative stuff, because it's the same thing in music, in jazz. The most important thing is active listening. It's not that you've prepared, I am going to sing this now. It's that you're listening to what the other people are doing and that you sense, okay, this is the mood you're giving me and I'm going to respond to it. But in this, in Druidry and in like, when you are attuned, when you are like, it's this hyper awareness that then allows you to connect with things in a completely different way. You could be standing in that same circle and not pick up on any of that. And again, looking back over those notes, like I was reading that in some of the early ones, I was so self-conscious and so kind of thinking of what are these people like, and oh God, like what do people wear to this, and are they going to think I'm weird, and as well like just not able to get out of your head. And the best thing about a practice, whether that be something that is cyclical or is that gradually you hone the skill of being able to drop into it and being able to kind of be hyper aware, like open up a little bit to that. I think that's a really important thing to develop.
Yeah. So somebody says, when you have depression, it's hard to tune in to something. That's Tina. Sometimes that's maybe telling you to withdraw, go within. I remember meeting somebody at a workshop years and years and years ago who went through a really deep phase of depression, and all she wanted to do was withdraw and stay. And somehow her family allowed her to do that. And that was exactly what she needed to do. And she came through it. And then really, it's like, I've had my rest. And that's going into the cave. Okay, not the caveau, the wine cellar, but that cave, the darkness, that one they say as
on your chest with the, waiting to kind of be able to come out again when it's time and you're changed.
That's right. And that yes, into the cocoon. That's exactly it. Maybe the word.
Sorry.
Go on.
No, I was just going to say, but I completely agree with you. But in saying that, when you are in that place, when you are in that deep kind of dark night of the soul, of course, it is hard to see it that way, or to kind of think like, oh, well, this is a cycle and I'll be in the next cycle. But I think, also that's the beauty of certainly the people that I've met through this community and in this path, like the holding of people in their brokenness and in their kind of darkest spaces, as well as in the light and the, look, I just wrote a thing, like, because it's far more than that. It's people dealing with really difficult and kind of heartbreaking and transformative things. But that's just a space for all of that. So even though it might not feel at that time you're moving in one direction, but again, I should have read those notes ages ago, but that idea of it not being linear, but the notion of like spirals, and that's, so you're kind of moving. So completely back into it now.
Wonderful. Sean Clancy says, I love this talk so much. Always so inspiring to see such inspiring minds. Whoops, I've lost my thing here. Minds open up and guide. Does the spark of inspiration catch brighter when you've given kindling ideas a chance to build up?
I would say possibly, because it depends on the form. Something like poetry, let's say, you literally could scribble like Emily Dickinson, after she died, they found that beautiful that box full of like 10,000 and she was writing those, like, but there's also craft, of course, with that. But sometimes it can just be a flash of inspiration. But with something like a song that needs to have a structure and repetition and that needs to change in places, that's going to take that. I'm trying slowly, very, very slowly, to work on a novel, and that is an entirely different skill. And I find that much harder because you can set up, I love the ideas. So you set them all up and I like the structure. So I'll write a nice map. Oh, that's what it's going to look like. But then you actually have to sit down and you must write every page. And, I remember I got to 5,000 words and I was Googling, how long is The Great Gatsby? That's my benchmark, the shortest novel / novella, and that's 75,000. So, there is it's flash of inspiration with, I'm going to sit with this now. I'm going to let it develop and grow, and work on it too.
Oh, it's wonderful. Just wonderful. So, what do you do for a living? Just tell us a bit.
I'm a teacher. I'm a secondary school English teacher, and I teach in a boarding and day school in very near to where I live, about 10 minutes away, in the middle of Sussex. What's lovely about it is that because it is a boarding school, an international school, we have children from all over the world, young people from all over the world, as well as local people. So I know when I trained to be a teacher, like everybody trains to be a teacher, I was full of the fire of like, I'm going to go in, I'm going to fix the system, I'm going to go to, and then the first job that I applied to was one that was down the road for me. And I had this real sense of like guilt, thinking, oh, I can't go to a place that's so cushy. Look at all the privilege that's here. That's not what I want to do. But I've been there for 13 years and and it really has been like I've grown kind of up while, I've been there too. And the richness, the diversity of culture, getting to work with young people. So because I teach secondary school, I teach 13 to 18-year-olds, and I do a lot of work. So I'm an English teacher, and also I'm the head of or lead for diversity and equality and inclusion in the college. So I run a lot of societies like New Era or Feminist Society. We've set up our Anti-Racism Society, our LGBTQIA Society. And even in the 13 years I've been there, that's an entire culture shift, from, I remember when I first set it up and a member of senior management came to me and said, we don't want to alarm you, but apparently there's students sitting in a classroom talking about feminism. Have you heard anything about this? I was like, yeah, it's all good. It's good. I set it up. It's fine. But there was a real suspicion of, in any school, particularly a place where, kids are there, they have to have a goal in mind of encouraging them to have kind of difficult conversations and to engage with social justice issues. So I get a tremendous sense of meaning from that. I love teaching literature, especially Gothic literature, and kind of doing all of that. That's fun. The weirder the better. But in the last year or so, this type of work of really starting to have conversations about how to make a diverse and inclusive space, especially in a place where there's a lot of privilege. How do you help those people to kind of look at the world in a different way? And for me, so it's something that I really get a lot out of. It's quite intense because I'm part-time because I have 2 little boys. And as any part-time teacher would tell you, I mean,
it's no such thing as a part-time job.
There's no such thing. And not as an English teacher, it always comes with you. But it's worth it. The balance is, I come away, and certainly the end of, term has finished now, with messages of thanks from students and a feeling that you've connected. I know in other jobs I had before, that lack of connection drove me crazy. I couldn't do it because I'd finished studying in Dublin. I did an MA at UCD in Anglo-Irish literature and drama after I'd finished at All Hallows. And then after all of that, I thought the worst thing in the world would to be a teacher. I thought like, oh God, like just how embarrassing. I'm not doing that. So I had this whole other path. But then when I started doing other jobs, I just thought, I want to feel some kind of spark or some connection, something that feels vocational or meaningful in some way.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Well, Ferdiad was a guest, oh God, a year ago. He's a teacher. Oh no, not another. Oh no, another teacher. Haha. You'll never have a single cushy day as a teacher. But there's something. So what you're saying that you didn't get in the other work, although there's always the challenges of looking after teens, that what is it you're getting? And I mean, what's your secret in that? You talk about all of this diversity and inclusivity. How open are they to that?
The students are entirely open, or the kids that I guess I see a bubble though as well, because the type of young people, so these are mostly 16 to 18-year-olds by the time they volunteer to come to these things on their lunch breaks. And
okay.
But it's open to all the way through kind of the senior school. This generation is absolutely fascinating. They're so aware of kind of social justice issues, of questions around gender and identity especially. And so it's wonderful because they're passionate for it and they want change, and they dislike injustice, and they want to see systems being toppled metaphorically and literally. They want to see that. But at the same time, they're still young people, and they get a lot of their information in a way that's kind of unfiltered. So some of it is like, okay, let's look at the nuance of this, and yes, you've read this, but what's this side of it like? Because I think young people are very keen to, like, it's funny, in youth and in like older age, it seems to be that you want to draw kind of very clear lines. This is what this is, and that's exactly what that is. So a little bit of is teasing out like, yes, those people feel like that, but what about those people? So but it's just all about facilitating conversations. Obviously, you as a counsellor and teaching as a counsellor, well, it's about holding spaces. But the reason that I kind of started to do that and initially set up a feminist society, which was a strange thing in that type of environment, was because in that mixed gender school, I felt that girls' voices were often being lost.
Okay.
A certain type of very confident kind of boy boarding school, and they're lovely, lovely kids. But you noticed when they started at 13, there was a sparkiness, and the girls were like feisty, and it was just lovely. It was a balance, and then with maybe just puberty or whatever, but there was this kind of dip in the confidence of the girls that by the time you got them back at 16, they didn't have the confidence to kind of they did one-to-one, but in those group dynamics often their voices were being lost, and frankly that just infuriated me. It made me so cross. So I thought, well, no, we can't have this. And a lovely thing about the boarding school aspect is that you have a duty in the evening, so you also get to talk to the students in a real sense. You become part of a bigger family instead of just seeing them. So they were saying this, they'd been listening to lots of Beyonce and saying, yeah, well, we want a space where we can talk about this. But even that, in the 7 years that society's been going, what's been beautiful about it was it's mixed between boys and girls. It has a crossover with the LGBTQIA society. It's all of these conversations came together. And in this role, I've been running International Women's Day and different events through it and getting people in. So yeah, it's like a really meaningful experience, to have. And then the actual other side of the teaching, it's the story thing. I just love teaching literature. And some people say to you, how can you're really going to teach Gatsby or Dracula like 5 times in a row? But like it is like any good story. Each time you see it, you bring yourself, you are different. It reflects the world differently. I mean, I've been teaching The Handmaid's Tale by Margaret Atwood, the last few years. And I was saying to the students, this is a Prescient novel, just wait. And I was saddened to see how accurate that actually, was, because it is amazing when life imitates art in that way, and how that happens. So
I read The Handmaid's Tale 32 years ago, and it terrified me. And the one line that made my blood run cold was, how come we didn't see this coming?
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
Anyway.
And that notion of cycles in its most negative sense, like that idea of how historical cycles repeat. I love the idea that W.B. Yeats, when he talks about shires and the notion of historical periods that raise to a kind of peak, and you'll find a golden age and then a fascist period. And when you start, the people who have studied history properly with that long view, and you see those spirals, and it's, terrifying if you don't pay attention, great if you do, but unless you're going to sail off to Byzantium and spend your life studying it, you might miss it. So you do have to be careful. You have to tune into it.
Well, Beth Amos says, that sounds wonderful what you're doing. I wish we had someone like you at our school. Well, I mean, I'd have loved that in my school. I
think it's a move, most schools now will have an EDI department or a DNI department. Some as a fear thing, like they don't want to, be put in the newspaper for, but I think there is a genuine moment or an awakening where people want to talk about these issues and they're really valuable. There is always the risk, inevitably, that there'll be a backlash, and we already see it, that the more you talk about something, look at with the development of women's rights and exactly what happens now in America, that massive pushback, like we've had enough of this now. We don't want to hear, any more of it, or with kind of Black Lives Matter. And then you hear people immediately coming back with a rejoinder of, the opposite of that. So I think that there is always the danger of that backlash. But again, that's where the broad view of history is useful, because you can kind of say, oh, well, wait a minute, let's not be swayed by the winds of whatever's popular. And people, certainly in the place, that I work in the main, it's been very well received. There'll be some voices who are, why are you focusing so much on this area? Did you not know it's the day for this? Don't you care about this? Well, yes. Okay. So there'll always be some people who are just looking to pick the holes in everything. But,
yes, you're either too inclusive or not inclusive enough, because you're
definitely. Not. Then you've got an agenda over here, or why didn't you care about that? So you just have to, especially with teaching, it's about those human connections. You're trying to light sparks. You're trying to and that's I'm painting a very Halcyon picture of teaching. Often it is bored people who don't want to do English literature and who will tell you on the first day, I hate reading. Why are you going to make me do this? And I'm like, well, I am going to make you do this for 2 years, so buckle in.
Yeah. I mean, my English teacher, I had a very good English teacher, but she was wasted on me. I didn't wake up until I was much older.
So you're so full as a teenager of awkwardness and there's that I remember my English teacher at school, who was wonderful. Now I look back and I think, oh yeah, she did that. But she was teaching us Macbeth in an all girls, Sisters of Mercy Catholic school in Dundalk in Ireland. And she had found a Macbeth rap now in the 90s in Ireland. She was really trying to make it very current. So she rapped in front of the class. And obviously as a group of teenage girls, you're just like, oh no, please don't. And I remember when I became a teacher about 2 years in, it's like,
where's that rap?
Yeah, it's like after you have children and you say I'll never do it again, and then you forget the pain of doing it. And I was sitting in the class and I was like, it'd be really good to get these kids engaged if I was doing a rap. And I said to a friend, they were like, please don't, whatever you do, don't rap. It's so yeah, I won't do that.
Oh, it's brilliant. That's wonderful. Has there been a time in your life that Druidry has supported you?
I'm trying to think about it. I think that for me, Druidry is about developing a sense of self, of an adult self. That's for me, that it has helped me to do that, to disconnect from maybe inherited ideas that I had, and also kind of expectations of things that are right things that aren't right things. So that's not very clear, but for example, when having moved away from home, I've lived away from Ireland now for 15 years or something, which is crazy to think. I never intended it would be that long. And that is quite a difficult thing because I feel entirely Irish. I love Ireland. The second I go back, the connection is, you think, oh, I miss it so much. But and also with kind of family relationships, naturally when you're away for so long, and there's ups and downs in those, and there's real moments when you can feel quite disconnected from who you thought you were or where you came from, or belief systems or value systems that you had. And Druidry for me is an absolute a voice that's kind of always there with you, a sense of a path that you've chosen to walk on and things that you've chosen to kind of care about, but also the individuality of it, the not needing to explain to somebody well, this is the thing that I'm doing, because certainly I found some edges with that, around family members, to be honest, who are kind of like, oh yeah, you're going off to that cult thing, are you? And you're like, I wish. It'd be so exciting. I was hoping, but like, and so what I actually did, and the more that I kind of read around it, and the more that I met people, and especially felt like part of community, because for me, the reading and the connecting to nature is really important. But in those moments when I can go to a gathering, or when I can go to Derrida, or when I can connect with people who I've met through Druidry, that connection is amazing. And you see the things that you love and you care mirrored back in other people. And that idea of creating for yourself the sense of, what do I believe in? Standing in peace and love, and, having a sense of our love of knowledge and justice, our responsibility to something bigger than ourselves. So rather than like one specific moment of like crisis that it helped me through, I would say that it has given me a framework within which to grow into a much greater sense of myself, and yet at the same time released me from the idea of spirituality as a more dogmatic thing. It's something that you can own and kind of take for yourself. And I blend it because I grew up in Catholicism. I studied theology. I've always sung in church choirs. I love liturgical music. I love churches as sacred spaces. But increasingly for me, the things I came up against was just a problem with dogmas around shame, body shame, the notion of kind of guilt, like that you should be constantly feeling this sense of, and I know I'm only giving a narrow version of that particular belief system, but just the constant injunctions and the limits of kind of putting it in. And then the more that I studied it, so I spent 4 years reading it, and just kept coming up against this idea of like, oh, well, that's evil. And, a woman brings kind of sin in this way. And like, and there's still parts of it that I think are so, meaningful, like even ideas around suffering, which are very problematic for people who haven't grown up in that belief system. But, there can be strength in that idea of being forged in kind of suffering. So like, there are many ideas that are good. And there are many aspects of Christianity that to me are, so important and beautiful as well. But with Catholicism particularly, I just really came up against all of those kind of questions around women's bodies and what is sinful, what lifestyle is sinful. Sexuality is something that can be put into little boxes. And it was just a kind of discomfort that stayed with me for a long time. And other people from, when they graduated from the course, went into lots of different, fields. But for me, it was a path that diverged. But then I love having a connection to spirit and to spirituality. And when I don't have that, I really felt it, this kind of void, this gaping, emptiness. So to be able to fuse the things that I believe in, to find my own path, I think it was, I'll give him credit. I heard Philip say this. I think it was his, I don't know. But to talk about walking the path of perennial wisdom, like to always be seeking, and to not to be rigid in the sense of like, well, I belong to this group and they believe that, and that's all I can believe, and we're not like that other version of whatever faith system. And instead to look at these syncretic belief systems and to see through all time what people have been doing is searching for meaning and searching for some height moment, something, numinous, and something that allows you to connect to something bigger than yourself while at the same time staying grounded. So Druidry is so valuable for me, but it's also been like walking down a corridor and then realizing there's all these other doors, and it's okay to go and explore them and, come across this belief system and say, oh, look at the truth in that. So I love that.
Beautiful. Pat says, I came home because she'd been in Oxford and I've loved every second of disconnecting from some of the value systems. I think there's something important about being able to go away, because I did. I went many times to Africa and coming back a different person, and then really, really appreciating my landscape now.
Valuing it so much. When I think it was maybe 4 years ago, perhaps, when I came to Aigsha, to the Celtic Spirituality. I remember saying it, we were sitting and there's this beautiful, in the evening, there was do we have a specific Irish word for a nice dead fod, or is that, I don't know.
Night court.
A night court. Yeah.
Night court, yeah.
And it was stunning, and we were under the stars. There was a massive big kind of bonfire in the middle. Everyone was in the circle, and as the darkness was falling, there was just this kind of anticipation. You could completely believe or imagine what it was like to sit in a night court and to wait for it. But for me, sitting in Ireland, on that land, being surrounded by these amazing speakers. I remember Owen the Bardon and different people, were there who were so amazing, and they were speaking about lots of different aspects of, I think he spoke about different threads that were woven. But I had this unbelievable sense of coming home, and of actually really connecting to what it meant to be Irish and to be there in my land, but to have come back as an adult, to have had the time to like form and develop, and also not have to bring with you the kind of slightly claustrophobic feel when you've always grown up in a place, or when everybody knows your business, or you kind of feel like everything that's happened to you in your life is very visible, like around your family or around, and to be able to go and essentially reinvent yourself, but in the place that you love and that you're connected to. And, that was an amazing experience. Anybody who can get to Ireland for the Eimear gathering.
It's on this year. It's on in the 12th, 13th, and 14th of August.
Finally, my sister is getting married at the same time this year, so I'm going to be.
No.
Yeah, I know. I told her how good it was, but but yeah. So those moments, I completely agree with Pat, and I think that we talked about depression earlier, but things in your life, traumas, that happen to you, and that idea that all of your cells reset. What is it, every 7 years? Like, you're an entirely different person, and it's so valuable to be able to go back to the place where you come from, as that different person, to be allowed to have the space to just kind of be that person, instead of, I know when I go home, everything works in a different way, because you're around family and there's different kind of patterns. But I love that Drudry has given me a global family. Like at the last gathering in Glastonbury, people from all over the world, and you have similar experiences. And, we went to the morning ceremony at Avebury Stones, and like just talking to people. I was talking to this lovely guy, I can't remember his name. I think he's from Norway maybe. And he was talking about the stories from the forest. Who was it?
Evan.
Yes, exactly. And he was talking about the landscape he'd grown up in, and the stories of kind of, in the mountains and the forest that are there. And you just like, it is amazing. It's like a kind of shortcut into connection, because you have all experienced something that is ephemeral and intangible, but has changed you. And, I love that. I think that's really powerful.
Yeah, just Anne says, this is such a profound discussion of why OBOD is so wonderful, supportive and affirming. Thank you. It is. So many people say, this is my tribe. I love being here. And I mean, people have said it when we gather physically.
Yeah.
But, in these last 2 years, people are talking about how they've found their connection even in this forum. And
it was amazing.
It's just beautiful to have that. I don't think we're a perfect order.
No, but
I don't
think that's an oxymoron. I mean, we shouldn't, like, what is that? That doesn't.
But it's that when you allow diversity, you allow there's no uniformity and there's no conformity, and that has its edge and that has its tensions. Sure. But it allows that space to develop.
But this, what that you've set up here, so to have the fireside chat, and I remember when you started doing this, and I really found that revolutionary, because it's such an egalitarian principle. First of all, it takes away the notion that some people perceive around orders, around hierarchy, and it opens up all these different voices that we would never hear. It shows us the similarities and the connections between us, as well as the kind of beautiful differences and the specificity of place. And it means that even for people who are never going to be able to get over to a gathering, or never going to be able to do it, you have a real sense of connecting. And same with, tea with druids. For me as well, when I couldn't have my own practice and life was really busy, being able to, I wouldn't always get to it every week or get the whole thing, but being able to know that I can go online and there will be a visualization or a meditation I can kind of dip in, or there'll just be a thinking about where are we now in the wheel, in the ear. I think that is amazingly powerful. I love that our order does that. I think that's egalitarian and diverse, and I think it's from a wellspring of compassion and curiosity, which is my favorite thing about the people that I've met, through OBOD.
Curiosity is the thing, and I know in the therapeutic world, psychotherapy, it's about respectful curiosity about people's lives and to have a fascination. And I do. I mean, obviously, these are not therapy sessions, but I get an insight. I just get, Daddy. No, just to. I mean, I've met you many times, and then there's certain things I haven't known about you, and it's just lovely to have. Selfishly, I get this opportunity to chat to people that I already know, as in I know them. Some I've known better, and then others I haven't. I don't know, and it's just absolutely fascinating to hear people's stories. Just incredible. And I mean,
I love that there's a repository of them online. Like, we talk about a store of wisdom, the triads about learning ancient lore. And obviously this isn't the same thing, but these are now in some strange cloud ether, but they'll always be there, and people can discover them. Those conversations will be there. It's this wealth of like stories and connections, and in a sense that is enriching and moving on Druidry. Some people have this kind of fixation of like, what is it? What was it originally? What were those guys in the white robes doing 5,000 years ago? And obviously some other Druid orders like approach that in a more kind of historicist way. But I don't think that that's something that we're concerned about. We're all about, from what I've seen, connection.
Yeah. It's about a practice that's relevant for today.
And that has oxygen and room to grow.
I think we're informed by the past and the stories. But again, of course, the Druids didn't record anything. The monks and the Romans did. And obviously they're heavily biased. But from the mythology, the stories, you can get some kind of sense. But it's about making it relevant for today.
Definitely.
It's not about preserving it in aspic or formaldehyde.
No, it's to spark, exactly. Druids and formaldehyde. I just had an image of that. It's to spark questions that lead you on a path. And I think that most people who come to this will always have had anyway that kind of questioning and that, like, I remember when so I was singing since I was 13 in the cathedral or big choir in the town where I lived. And it's a beautiful building that was a kind of Victorian build. And there's these stained glass windows. And I used to sit there and I kind of, look at them. And there's this massive stained glass window of some High King of Ireland being converted by St. Patrick. And all of the Druids are lying on his feet like this. And he's here like, bringing the shamrock. And I wrecked my mother's head being like, what's happening in the window? Who are those people on the ground? Why are they on the ground? Like, I would read like the tiny little line that said, St. Patrick converting the High King of whatever, and the Druids recoil in fear from whatever. And I remember even then, and obviously if you grew up in Ireland, maybe everywhere, your idea of Druidry is that it's connected to this dangerous concept, paganism that you don't really want to. But I was fascinated by that, and all through the years, I would kind of think, well, what is that story? And there's obviously two different stories. What are those people lying on the ground? Why are they on the ground? Why were they so threatening that they need to be kind of cowed, by this system? So while we don't want a formaldehyde system, if you look at the past and it just leads you to wonder, like, well, what was the worldview or the context that would have caused a story like that? And then that's keeping it alive, but not being a slave to it, I think, as well.
It's interesting. I mean, I have to thank the nuns in my primary school for, we did all the myths. I mean, obviously child versions.
Yeah.
And the word Druid always made me tingle.
Oh yeah, I was excited by it.
I came from Roman Catholic background, and the P word was heavily loaded. It took me a good many years within the order to actually become comfortable with the word pagan. I am now.
Druid word. I remember going to, we used to go sometimes in the summer over to the Aran Islands to Inishmore. Angus. And I remember as a child, like one morning I remember sneaking out really early in the morning, and it has this amazing landscape there where like it's almost lunar, like the rocks that are all kind of broken up. Right. And going out really early and kind of walking around. And I brought my little sister with me, and she still talks about how, like, you told me you were bringing me off to fairyland and we were going to go and meet the Druids. And I was like, I remember this like desire, thinking, I always had this feeling, and this is a very Irish idea anyway, of the veil. The thinness of the veil is something that we all grow up and just accept as as the norm, regardless of how secular, you know. But that idea that it's just there, it's just over there. If you go at the right time, I remember I had an innate sense that maybe if it's earlier, if I go then I'll get to whatever the place is over there, or whoever that kind of.
How old were you?
So if she was like, I must have been like 12 or 13, and you know, kind of being like, come on, we'll go off on this adventure, and obviously probably causing family, you know, a great deal of stress. So I've always been drawn to Celtic mythology, and because of, you know, in my school we did it with the nuns and other teachers, a lot of kind of Yeats and Celtic revival poetry and art. So for me, that was a tapestry to my child. I loved that. I always was drawn to the beauty of that. But as you say, the word pagan itself, not only been a loaded word. I mean, to be honest, it's still a word that for me doesn't feel like it reflects my understanding of my spirituality. But that could be just a hangover of, you know, because I guess I prefer that idea of that path that you're kind of walking on, this perennial wisdom, all things being connected. Obviously the meaning of, you know, pagan as a kind of country folk and this kind of belief in itself is completely benign and lovely. But I guess for me, often it feels like it's in opposition to something, and that doesn't like sit with me in the same way, or there's a kind of like, are you in this? Are you not in this? You know, and so, but maybe that's something that I'll grow to feel differently about. But and certainly when I first went to, you know, any grove or any gathering, like I was full of those preconceptions, which I've, you know, happily unloaded myself of. But it's not the word. If you ask me what is your spirituality, that wouldn't be the word that described it. I would feel more connected to the idea of a kind of goddess spirituality, of Druidry as a path, of, you know, because I guess for me it's deeply personal, and it's not necessarily about subscribing to any kind of system in that way. But, yeah.
Would you describe yourself as a Druid?
Definitely, yeah.
I'm very comfortable with the word. Some people aren't, but I would say I'm pagan and I'm not. I'm not defined by it, but I'm now comfortable with it.
Yeah, for me, pagan, if it's synonymous with the notion of the old ways, I'm completely fine with that. That makes sense to me. Like, you know, the old ways, the old stories, the old ways of connection. And I know that that's etymologically where the word is from anyway. So that completely does make sense. So in that sense, I know this is not a therapy session. Perhaps, therefore, it is some kind of hangover resistance rather than, but Druidry completely sits with me. I mean, it's something that, you know, and I've also got to the point where, like, I will be more open about that. And I would say to people who say, oh, where were you at the weekend? And I was at Glastonbury, and they'll immediately say, but the festival's not there. Yeah. And you're like, no, I belong to an order of bards, obates, and druids, and you get that kind of like, oh my god, you know. And I guess in a school, and there's that sense of a need to have a kind of public and private persona as separate kind of things. But no, I feel really connected and comfortable with Druidry. That's not a word that makes me feel
wonderful. Just a few people here talking about the order. Gabriella, whom I met at I met her first just in the comments, because she's a great contributor to the conversations, and then she came up to me at the gathering, and it was just lovely because she's in the US. She traveled a long way, and she said, I definitely got a solid sense of community just from the online things. I would have been super reluctant to meet people in real life without having gone through a good online communication bond first. That's really interesting, Gabriella. And it's just really, I'm really appreciating the importance of, because it's very easy to say, well, it's not the same. Well, it isn't the same as a physical a gathering, but how important it is. And I hope, Gabriella, you did enjoy the gathering as well. Meeting people.
There's a letdown. Yeah. Oh God, do they look like that in real life?
Yeah. And then Pat says, OBOD is the only space I've ever met that has that powerful connection without an enforced conformity of belief or behavior. Most of the ways people form a sense of group don't apply to us, but the shared inspiration of the Gwers holds us, even if we take it in different directions. Absolutely. And then Ferdiad, who's a physical person. I mean, he is who I've met him physically at gatherings.
The physical realm, Ferdiad. Well done.
He says, I've met some lovely Druidry folk via the Fireside chat. It's a great thing. And that's really, because, you know, there are people, and I haven't been able to acknowledge all of them, but there are people having conversations in the chat.
No, I can't see it, but yeah, I'll look at it later.
I always find that that's just amazing. And so Gabriella says, when I met people, it felt really safe, nice and reassuring. I'm so pleased that you felt that, because it's very hard to come as a first timer when you think everybody else seems to know everybody else, because that was my experience when I first came. I found it really difficult because I'm actually very shy. And then Ricky,
situations tricky too in that same way. Like, you know, I think through performing and stuff, I can do that more easily, but I feel really awkward about that first kind of like, oh, you know, we're gonna have to go in with people and there's this expectation. So OBOD is definitely very, very, very welcoming. And I think what you're doing, like the importance of, as you say, diversity and more voices, and the more that people know there'll be spaces made for us to hear their different voices is really key. Even I was thinking in I can't remember if I said this to you, but like in the Eisteddfod and the gatherings, we have all the amazing music. It would be cool to have like a version of like an open mic thing where people could kind of go up and say, hey, you know what, like I was thinking about this, I wrote this poem, or I'd like to tell a story, or like just as a spontaneous half an hour kind of slot where
interesting.
I'll hear things we'd never hear before. I know planning wise, but just the more it's listening to people. Yeah,
that's an interesting one. I shall file it away.
Just in that sense that the possibility, that little spark of like the unknown. I mean, you know, it could go terribly wrong, and but I think that we're brave enough as to create that complete unknown space, like, and because going to Avery and hearing people's different stories, and you know, I think, God, how many people are we not getting to hear like what their different kind of talent or thing is? And in the gathering in June, so I was singing, you kindly asked me to sing and then to do a version of a more upbeat community song for Up on Top of the Tour. And when I was talking to Gabby and Paddy, I kind of said, well, sure, we'll get together a few people who can sing, we'll make a choir. But I thought maybe it'll happen, maybe a few people will do it. And I asked during it, this amazing group of like absolutely amazing singers. I kind of turned around, I was trying to organize some stuff, and I looked back and there was like 10 people, and they were like, yeah, great, we're here, we're going to do this. And they were absolutely like fantastic. They learned it immediately. They went up there, they were really keen, you know, to kind of to do it all, and like gorgeous people. And we had a little chat and we were like, yay, Druid choir. So I love that idea that we can create spontaneous little pockets of creativity.
I think you've made a point, because these chats are for ordinary members, not the big names. And the Eisteddfod is, you know, for really good musicians, etc., etc. And it's about the logistics, but who knows?
Yeah, I think, and that's the lovely thing about this. It can keep growing, and you know, and we're, as you say, we're not trying to be perfect, so we could try something and then say, well, that didn't work.
Sean Clancy says, can't wait for Eggs. Sean, you're very welcome. Had rarely had the chance to celebrate in a gathering and connect with people. These Fireside chats and Tea with the Druid have been so enlightening. And Ricky, who is has a great attender of the gatherings in real, as my daughter used to call it. Yeah. I've always enjoyed the physical meeting of gatherings, but online connections and the chats, online rituals, etc., has opened up a whole new realm of connectivity. Thanks for saying that, Ricky. It's really nice to know that. And then Ferdy, it says, I feel like OBOD is the place where the opposite is true. You show me your spiritual, you show me your special spiritual weirdness, and I'll show you mine.
I wondered if that's where that was going to go. Yeah.
And then Tina, she's right. You never know what people have hidden in their treasure chest. Well, I've discovered that from these chats. And people, generally the first reaction is when I say, would you like to join me? I don't have anything to say. I mean, you've had wonderful guests. And I go, yeah, well, everybody has said that. Yeah. So
I was really flattered. And then today I was genuinely terrified. So I was sitting watching my sons play. I could not. And I said, I can't think of anything to talk about. There's no way I'm going to be able to talk for that long. Toby said, how do you feel about this? I said, I don't know. He said, well, what? How do you feel about Druidry? And I said, I can't think. I was like, what's wrong with you? I had a complete like, oh my gosh, I'm not going to. Yeah. So, but it's in reality, it's a lovely thing. Everyone should do it if they get the chance.
Oh, absolutely. Well, Ricky says a tradition that is 500 years old or 1,000 or more has no more validity than one that has only existed for a decade. Every tradition has to start with the first time. Yeah. It is the quality and meaning of the tradition that is important, not longevity or lineage. Absolutely. I think we're on a hiding to nothing if we're talking about how long it is, how old it is, and the line of succession or lineage. Highly flawed.
Yeah. And when you recognize that everything feeds into everything else, like the Abrahamic faiths completely borrow their ideas from other places, and then it stops being important about, well, which was there first. I mean, that is such a kind of patriarchal and limited way of thinking about spirituality anyway, isn't it? My temple is bigger than yours and I built it first, it seems to me.
Higher, and my grove is higher.
Yeah, I've got massive flanks and flying buttresses. Look at them there, they're amazing. But yeah,
I grew up with the One True Church, so I'm familiar with the One True Grove. Gabriella says, I think that's just Ireland, and she's talking about people knowing. Across the world, people don't know much about Druids, and younger people associate them with video games. Maybe so, but I think now, just in these last 2 years, when you think of the online presence, that there's way more exposure. Yeah, and you know what? Druidry comes to people when it's meant to.
And they seek it out. So, yeah.
It'll find you. If you go to the mountain, a path will appear. But it's like when the pupil's ready, the teacher will come. That it comes at the right time.
I love those stories about, we're talking about connectivity now through the internet, but I am fascinated when I hear members of the order tell their stories about how they had to like seek it out. They had something that they felt, so they went to a shady esoteric magazine and a kind of bookshop, or they heard about something, someone told them, and they rang up a number or they sent away for a thing. And I think a little bit of that is an initiation, isn't it? It's that sense of something has called you, there's a moment of connection, then something strange and synchronized happens or opens up, but then you have to kind of keep trying to find it out. And I think that even, if Druidry as a concept is unfamiliar, if you want to know about it, people will go and they'll read about it or they'll hear about it in a way they didn't expect, to do it. Like you hear lots of people saying that in the White Goddess, they came across that in a different way, but then it mentioned all of these different aspects, and and I love those moments when different parts of culture like overlap. So you're reading something and you say, oh, wait a minute, I heard about that before. When I was thinking about one of those early Gwers experiences, a really powerful one was I think it was very early, and you were meant to go into a kind of sacred grove, and it was around the time of trying to find a kind of inner child or connect to a grove energy, and I really hadn't read lots of things around it, and it had been after a lull period where I'd been away from kind of practice and I was feeling it. And so Toby, I was with him, and he said, well, he'd been a bit further ahead, and he said, I'll do a meditation first if you want, and I'll do a kind of sacred grove, and I have to switch off my voice of being like, oh, you're doing that too slow, the intonation of your voice. But when I let that go, I remember having this really feeling really connected, and having this sense of this like blue light or presence that was kind of starting to become tangible. And then you were meant to ask the person who it was, and they said Nematon, and I had never heard that thing or phrase at all. And I said, oh yeah, right, I'm just in my stupid critical voice that I find hard to turn off in my head. I said, oh, I've obviously read that from whatever last book it was that I just read. And I got this strong sense of this thing saying, you don't know me yet, but you will know me. And then I went on through the Gwers, and I picked up some other book that I was reading like about 2 months later, and came across the concept of Nematona, the spirit of the sacred grove. And I genuinely, maybe it was some kind of Jungian collective unconscious, but I did not know that. And I had this real a moment of it was true. I should have just trusted it, and I love that it's waiting for you, and you have to just take off the cynicism. And I know personally, and I think maybe it's doing literature teaching and that kind of analytical brain, it can be quite hard to switch that off. Often I find in group situations and meditation situations that it's difficult to kind of to turn that off and to allow yourself to get into it. But yeah.
Well, I discovered Druidry by accident. I mean, I'd known about them, but in terms of the order, I found it in a book. I was looking, because I've been working with different medicine people that weren't from my tradition, and that was my frustration. And then I did. It was Cassandra Easton's book, Modern Day Druidess. She mentioned OBOD at the back.
And that was it.
Yeah, but I had been looking. But this, it's like you're in a bookshop, and I've been in a bookshop many times, but it's on this particular day. And it's happened to me many times where a particular book hops out and I go, oh yeah, I'm buying this. This is the right book right at this time. I may have seen it before and it wouldn't have registered. So it's just that magic.
It's magic, and it's the proof of everything being connected, and
Yeah. So what is the thing that you're most proud of?
What I'm most proud of. I guess I am most proud of the situations or the times when I feel like I'm living fully. I think the opposite of that, the thing that has frustrated me the most is when at times in my life when I felt like, oh, I'm wasting, I'm not doing what I should be doing. I'm not being creative. I'm not, and that I've written it down in various notebooks and different things. That drives me. I can't. I get really unpleasant to be around when I kind of feel that call. But not just in creative things, like as a mother, when you feel like you're really connecting and like you're kind of, you've been able to be there and kind of be present, or and when you can do that with integrity. I think for me that notion of kind of truth and integrity and justice, those are really important concepts. So when I feel like I'm living in right relation to the people around me, honoring creativity, and also, being able to kind of do the roles that I've chosen to do, as your mum said, do it with your will, the like becoming selective. So I've been proud where I've been able to, and particularly, I guess, as you move through your 30s, have a stronger sense of your voice and who you are and what you think is valuable and not, and being able to learn boundaries. I think it was a big thing for me. Like, I'm an eldest child, so quite a feisty and fun, but sometimes tumultuous kind of family. So on the one hand, I'm terribly bossy, but also a kind of a pleaser type thing. So I think I would have probably had a lot of making things okay, or feeling like that was my job. So in terms of personal growth, and Druidry has definitely given me, again, that inner, that space that you can go into, that it's like, well, this is your space, and regardless of what else happens or what other people think you are, you can form a sense of your own and knowing of your own self, which is an incredibly strong thing, because then it gives you the courage to think, well, just because a situation comes at me, in your teens and 20s, I felt like I was just constantly responding to and being buffeted to various life events, and I would have this feeling of, oh my God, my life is so chaotic. Why is everything so chaotic? And so gradually starting to think, well, the chaos is there, but maybe I could step away from the chaos, and I can choose where to put my energy. So being able to, to write, I had a poem published in Baltana, which is a lovely Irish literary magazine that's based in Cork. That was a great moment. Being able to, be a parent to my little boys and actually be there to kind of try and form a home environment where they can fully be themselves, and you can give them what they need, and make all the terrible mistakes you do and mess up and swear far too much, but still find your way back to giving them kind of what they need. And then definitely proud of now, this, getting to do this work around equality, diversity, and inclusion. I had, as many people do, I think, when you go back to work after maternity leave, a real feeling of I don't belong here. I don't have a really not important, but I'm on the edges, and I don't, I'm only here half time. I just really felt like I was kind of flipping around the wind. And then, so I wrote to them and said, look, I love doing this work. We don't have this. I think this is important. Is this something that we could kind of set up and do? And in that, getting to talk to people and hear about their experiences, and actually have the opportunity to try and make somewhere a safer space and a more inclusive space, I do feel like if I left tomorrow, I would have a sense of kind of achievement with that.
Oh, that's a wonderful place. That's a wonderful note on which to leave, rather than having that sense of an unfulfilled sense, or
that you stayed somewhere for too long. There's a danger of, because it's a lovely place to work and it's very near me, and although there are stresses, there's also things that are great and easy, but I didn't want it to be easy. I wanted it to be harder but meaningful. So I think that is definitely has been the kind of the theme of the story for me, that the things that have been really hard, and for anybody, but all the things that I look back on, any life experiences in relationships or different kind of moments of crisis, that for a long time, like, wound you, or you're so conscious of the scars of those things that you feel that, like, oh, that's who I am. I'm changed because of the scar, the whatever of it. But then after a while, perspective shows you that, in fact, it was by surviving that and by kind of changing as a result of it. That's who I am. That's the scar was the mark of it happening. But then actually, then changing the next part of your path was you becoming who you are. So yeah, that's an enjoyable thing, to have a sense of self that feels more rooted. And I really feel that more strongly in the times when I'm thinking about the place that I'm in and connecting, like, even just, I said it earlier about that simple thing of, like, looking out the window, and, like, so we have, like, a window up in the attic part, and just going out, like, literally, like, moon gazing, like a complete, and the sense of peace from that, the sense of connection, and, like, rightness. It's, like you saying, you looked in that book, and when I do that, and I remember the first times through in Druidry and OBOD, that being encouraged as, like, this is a practice, and you're like, what? This thing that feels incredibly right is a practice? That's that's great.
Yeah, it doesn't have to be hard. So before, because it's I'm going to ask you to sing, but before you do, what's the most reckless thing you've done?
What's the most reckless thing I've done in life, or in Druidry, or just, like,
in life? It's very open, a very broad question.
I don't know. In general, I'm probably not. I have moments of recklessness, but, like, I'm a Taurian, and I'm quite, like, I like to, I like to know. I definitely think I like some order, and then I like, within that safe order, to be able to be the person people perceive as being spontaneous and reckless. But I like to know that the bounds are there somewhere, I think. I think that moving to England was maybe, like, I was like 24 maybe, or something, and I'd spent 5 years studying at university. There was an obvious path that was there, but the thing I always loved was theatre and acting and music, and so I decided that I was going to come to London and become a musical theatre star. That's what I was going to do. So that was pretty reckless, even though in my head I was saying, oh, it's only for a certain period of time, and I can go back and I can do it. And when I got there, I soon realized that the reality of becoming a musical theatre star is harder than the idea of, because you have to be free all day to go to whatever open auditions they are, and they're very hard to find. But I had to work. I didn't want to work all night, because I'd worked all my way through university in cocktail bars and comedy clubs. So I had kind of done that. So the occasional few things. I went to an open audition for The Hobbit when that was becoming a musical, and sang an Irish folk song. And thankfully, I think they decided I wouldn't make a good Hobbit. That was probably I was so gutted. But and then I actually got a part in the chorus for a production of My Fair Lady off the West End, and I completely, in that early 20s stupid way, sabotaged it for myself, because they wanted me to sing second soprano instead of first soprano. I'm an idiot. And I said, well, I already know this entire musical inside out. Like, as a first soprano, I couldn't possibly sing against the harmony. So, I've gone to a few rehearsals now. I don't think it's right. I just left that. That was really kind of stupid. And then in that whole period, that was quite a tumultuous period, and I'd been in a relationship for a long time that kind of disintegrated quite quickly. And despite being someone who often stayed in things kind of for long and tried to make things okay, I just decided that I couldn't be who I needed to be in that relationship. So I walked away from that and kind of took an entirely different path, and so that at that time that felt like scary too. I was in a different country. I'd been with that person for a long time. We'd gone through a lot together. But now, like everything, that was the beginning of an entire new chapter. And it was a moment of not feeling like the things that were important to me were things that, like, I wasn't with somebody who saw me kind of, or who I could be really real with. And weirdly, it was about it was Easter Sunday, and I wanted to go to a service because I really wanted to have a connection to home. I remember wanting to go to Westminster or somewhere, and I said, come with me to this thing. I was really homesick, and I really needed a moment of spiritual grounding. And And my partner just was like, why would I do that? I'm not going to do that. And I remember standing in the big outside space of it and just thinking, actually, for me, any spirituality, but that connection was vitally important, and that I needed to be connected to something bigger. And it just really gave me a sense of like, actually, I could stay doing this forever, or I could make decisions that things that feel meaningful are things I have to follow. So reckless, but valuable.
Oh, wonderful. Brilliant.
Yeah. I was going to read you a poem if you wanted. Did you? I don't know if you.
Yeah, and a song.
And a song.
So, yeah, because that Irish, whatever.
I'll do the Oscar Fairy Child one, maybe the one that.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. So this is a poem called Hurricane. It's the poem I was talking about earlier. For our little boy Hugo, who was teething badly and crying for about 2 years. And, so this was, I was sitting in his room in the dark, and there was that feeling that all new parents have, like, when is it going to be over? What am I going to do? And like, you're away, he kind of got quiet, but you can't go anywhere. So I was just throwing my phone out in the dark and was doing it. Another example of technology helping creativity. But okay, Hurricane. You bend time with the force of your cry. Can it be only 30 grains since I have clutched you to me, thrashing and wild, force of a hurricane, child? A blind alchemist, I try every trick in a book I can't read in the dark. Potions and patience, feverish feeding, pleading to your raging heart. Teeth tearing through the surface of you, your tears and my wordless cry. Sleepwalker ripped from the island of sleep, weight of a year on my eyes. No mother's kisses, no father's touch, no stemming this boiling tide. Your tiny craft slipped away from its mooring, nothing to soothe you but time. I wait in the dark, holding my breath until yours at last steadies and slows. Nerves on the outside, waiting for silence, wanting to leave, cannot go. Your sleeping is fitful, little red gums inflamed with the pain you can't say. I wait till it's safe, peer at your face, guiltily tiptoe away. Knowing the storm is far from being over, sleeplessly straining to hear, counting the minutes remaining till morning, the ghost of your cry in my ear.
Wow. Oh, I can so identify with that.
Every parent who's been a parent is like, oh my God.
Wow. That's beautiful. And you read your poetry very well. Not all writers read their own poetry well. Beautiful. Wow.
Very much. Thank you.
There's loads of oh wow, so powerful, brings it all back again. That's Julia. And there's wow, stunning, well done, magic.
Thank you so much.
Brings back so many memories, wonderful poems. So I think any child will. I have a 2-month-old son, and this made me cry. That's Tina.
Oh, Tina, you'll get through it. It's a cycle.
It too shall pass. I know I didn't sleep for the first 2 years. My son was 2. For 2 years, I didn't sleep with him. I couldn't sleep because of him.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. That important distinction. He was occasionally sleeping, but you couldn't. Yeah, it is. It's an amazing time, and like being a mother, it wasn't. I definitely was one of those people who always said, "Oh, I'm not going to be a mother. I'm going to be a creative poet. I'm going to run around Charleston and float in rivers and do all of that." So I am so glad that it's been possible eventually to fuse, not to lose your creative self when you're doing this other creative role. To be able to find both of those has been really, really powerful. And I think that, like anybody, you're a better parent if you have a sense of your own fullness, your own kind of the multifaceted nature of who you are, because otherwise everything shrinks in and all you're aware of is the things you're doing wrong. So to have those little times to be able to escape into the creative is so important, and to have a spiritual path that encourages you to do that is wonderful. Yeah. Can I read you the one for Ireland? Tina
says, I wasn't going to be a mother, but he came to me at the age of 39. I had my first child at 39, and was never, but I
Did you?
planned.
39? Yeah.
I was 39 too, but I was, when I was younger, I never wanted kids. So I did by the time at 39, I did, or 37, I decided,
It
yes.
felt like a choice, didn't it? I think when you're growing up, like, as a woman, there's this sense that, like, I don't know, it's like a game of snakes and ladders. There's so many things you can get wrong, and there's so many, like, if I don't choose this path, then I won't be able to do that path. And I really remember having that feeling of, well, I'm not going to fall into some kind of, drudgery and give up all of that. I didn't want to do that. And I waited a long time. And, between Hugo and Oscar, there is 4.5 years between them, because of that sense of the thinking how beautiful it would be for him to have a sibling, but also the worry of that, starting that all over again. It's such an all-encompassing process.
Yes.
Once oh, you should have twins. I think, what a terrible thing to wish on someone. But actually, like, in a sense, it would have its own challenges. But
yeah. Tina, thank you. She says, I feel better now that you were also 39, so was Kate Bush. And I had my second at 42. And my midwife said, do you want to have another one at 45? I said, no, 2 is enough. Yeah. But my husband was 53 when our son was born. He was 57 when our daughter was born. He'd started when he was 23. Yeah. So he had 5 children before we met.
And then a second.
And he wanted, and he was happy to go again.
But, that means that, like, for Tina and for you, your children had parents who knew themselves, who were already, like, secure in who it was that they wanted to be. All parents make mistakes. It's fraught with mistakes. And yet it's so much harder, I think, when you're still, you're still trying to find yourself. I think it's why people sometimes find it so difficult earlier, on. So yeah, I think 39 sounds like a splendid age to have.
I know if I'd had them earlier, I wasn't a mess, but I just wasn't mature enough. I hadn't sorted myself out.
No,
to be able to be a mother. So, and Howard, he was so more available to his second family than he was, because he's doing the career thing. Andrew says, I had my youngest at 39. Great. So, yeah, I mean, it's funny, I have clients that say, well, what's your background? And they go, oh, I had very elderly parents. They were very old fashioned. They were very protective. And they wouldn't, elderly parents gone. I go, okay, he's talking about we took our kids to Africa, as babies.
Yeah.
All sorts of crazy things. So we weren't protective parents, as in old-fashioned protective, careful parents.
What's the most reckless thing you've done? I think that's a fascinating question.
Okay, the most reckless thing I've done is I met Howard 9 months after I was separated from my husband. A month later we went out, and 7 months later we got married.
Amazing.
that is not, you'd say, don't do that. That's on the rebound. Best thing I ever did. Yeah. And my second reckless thing was go for a home birth at 42. Having tried a home birth at 39 and not succeed, I had a section. My midwife says you can do it. But I knew I was safe. And each time I knew it was right. But outside, people would say that is reckless and crazy.
Yeah. No, I completely agree. I didn't know that about it. Yeah. And that happened in a similar way. After I left that first relationship, and I was, there in London, I met Toby through work, and, we were good friends, and we had this really kind of strong connection. But similarly, I remember my mom saying to me, for every year you're in a relationship, you have to have, 3 months for each year, like some made up mathematical formula about how long you had to. But I remember our early conversations where I think the first thing we chatted about was, where forests or oceans, which could you have? You can only have one. I remember thinking, oh, okay, this is a different type of conversation. And similarly, sometimes you just know, your heart knows, you have to jump into those situations.
Because it was interesting, because after I'd separated from my first husband, a really lovely man, and I said I can never make a promise again because I broke that promise. I mean, we both did. It was consensual, mutual. And I thought, how can I do that? Because I made that commitment the first time for life. Yeah. And then I met him and I was like, yep, that's right. So it's interesting. Helen had her last baby at 45. Tina had a C-section, wanted a natural one. Maybe you can go again. Who knows? My most reckless thing was to marry my husband 6 weeks after getting together. I was 19. He had just turned 18 and we've been married 30 years next month. Wow, Sue. Wow. I bet your parents must have been wild. Yeah. But that is I just love that. That is brilliant. When you know, and I'm blown away by that.
Yeah, exactly. When you know, and maybe who knows the journey of the soul, how many different times you might have had different experiences and learned from it. You might, the reason you might know immediately is because it's laid out for you. It's hard to know why you would sense it. So you just have to go with what's right. That's especially, like, I love, that idea that we're saying that this is a system without specific dogmatic beliefs or specific rules. And it encourages you in your own life as well to be freer, to open yourself up to, like, the notion of a tide that comes and goes and different cycles. And certainly for me, I think this whole process has helped me be less uptight and rigid and judgmental and, all of those other things. So, yeah. And then just, like, to be spontaneous, to think, okay, I'll do it. I like to take creative opportunities. So I've done some things like in a London jazz club, like get up and kind of do some terrifying things that, felt really, but then afterwards you're like, oh, I didn't let fear stop me from,
I mean, I've always said, don't let no money and don't let fear stop you from doing things. But somehow you can, not easy, but to find ways. The cats,
she is able to get out, just for all you animal lovers out there, but she's very old. So I think she's got a little bit senile, and she does this at nighttime. She just, she cries for ages. I can't see Eimear now, but.
I don't know what happened there. Somehow. Weird. I don't know. Anyway, I think he was talking about your old cat.
No cats were harmed in the making of this fireside chat. She's fine. She's very old. Her brother died like years ago, and at nighttime she goes around the house as if she's looking for him. And there's nothing we can, So,
oh, the poor thing, poor thing.
I love you, Evie. I'm not abandoning you. It's fine. Yeah.
Well, she's part of the conversation. Somebody says that I should be interviewed. Yes, I was twice.
Yes.
I think it's Fireside Chat 12 and 13, year and a half ago. Christmas Eve and New Year's Eve, Pat Booker chatted to me, so you can find that, whoever asked it.
And you had a long one. Do you remember with Philip? Was it when you did the original handout, when he announced it, when he at that gathering?
That's right. That was.
You had like a counselor's chair. You both kind of sat down trying to out-psychoanalyze each other. That was fascinating to watch. I learned lots about your shadow side there. That was.
Oh, did you? Okay. So
I won't reveal it here. I'll reveal it in the chat.
So listen, we're getting on. So how about your song? Your poem, your other poem,
and then I'll do something. If that's okay. This is a poem called "Green, White, and Gold: A Hymn for My Country."
Ooh, yeah.
Rich is Erin's sacred soil, green her verdant hills, unfurling gently, peacefully, hide her guilt, her ills. White the colour of her church where holiness resides, white as hollow sepulchre, the hidden bones inside. Her moral courage golden shimmers in soft rain, hypocrisy as old as time, exploiting fear and shame. You raise the girl as white as snow and teach her right from wrong. You tell her all the world is hers, she lifts her voice in song. You do not teach her of the world, as through a glass she peers, her body veiled in mystery, her purity revered. If she should fall from the lofty perch, if life should so conspire, from ignorance or blighted fate, how quickly then the fire. The voices that are clamoring, cacophony of sound, they screech out her transgression and tear her to the ground, decry her shame, her selfishness, her recklessness, her sin, yet glorify the speck of life she carries now within. She gathers close her tarnished self. She rises through the fear. In anguished pain and secrecy, the path ahead is clear. Imbued with all the gifts you gave, she weighs up right and wrong. A lonely journey lies ahead, and heartache is her song. A wounded song they sing, daughters of Erin's Isle. Your guilt, your shame won't silence them. Hand in hand they rise. In their thousands now they lift their faces to the light. And green their hope, their courage golden, their spirits glistening white. Oh no, not again. Sorry.
Wow.
So I wrote that in 2018 after the repeal, the Eighth Amendment movement, but it seems unfortunately resonant again now and always. But yeah.
Wow. Poppy says, Poppy's in Crete. Jennifer, you mesmerize with your poems and the way you read them. Beautiful. I agree.
Thank you.
Oh my God. What a powerful, it's, wow. Loads of reactions as well. Again, wow. Breathtaking.
I remember seeing, I was coming home to Ireland. I was on a plane, and it was when the Eighth Amendment was repealed. I remember just seeing these images. I was looking of all of these women just walking hands in hands, and personally for me, that just resonated so much. And I just really had this incredibly strong sense of sisterhood and of the power of that. And, you know, and there were men and women walking together there in those marches, but the power of like raising your voice to challenge systems that have kept people down, and that we're just supposed to accept kind of value systems that, you know, tell you what's right and wrong, and rather than actually weighing up your own sense of that. So yeah.
Sherry says, speechless. Healing words.
Thank you.
Yeah. So are we ready for a song?
We're ready for a song. Okay. Sorry.
I hope our viewers are.
Yeah, I'm sorry if this is, I feel like we haven't.
Why are you sorry?
Because I feel like we haven't like talked about enough esoteric things, and I haven't mentioned any books.
You haven't mentioned we'll mention your book afterwards. So
no, books that I've like read. No, I haven't plugged the album. No, books that like, you know, like I feel like I should be more erudite or talking about the wonderful Druidry books that have inspired me, but you know,
well, listen to this. Gabby says, I'm so glad to hear these poems and songs again, to have heard them initially in person, then to hear them again. How incredibly lucky we are. I'm sure, are people happy to hear Jennifer singing, or should she be talking about all the esoteric books she's read? I just
or haven't read. Although I have to say, I know you'll all have read this, but I've been reading If Women Rose Rooted.
By,
wow, that is so powerful. I just keep coming to that. So yeah, there you go. I name checked a book. No, that was the book, Eimear. I wasn't suggesting.
Oh,
okay. I just figure on Wednesday night.
Well, the people are wanting songs, enjoying all of it. Sing for your supper, sing, and then the books.
There is no book.
Please sing.
No book. This is like every Irish wedding, funeral, everything. When you know you come in, you pay your respects to the dead person, and then some relative goes to you, sing, go and sing. Okay, this is Oscar, a Fairy Child. It was a story that I was telling my little boy Oscar at nighttime, and I was thinking about stories like of Oisin and Tirnogue, and lots of kind of Irish mythology of children separated from kind of mothers and hearing a call, or like, you know, the kind of the call of the sea, all those things were in my head. So this is so it goes. In the darkest night, the trees reach out their hands to you. In the deepest wood, the leaves would make a bed for you, and they would tumble down and lay beneath your head. Oscar, a fairy child. Your eyes are blue and gray as the wild, wild sea, and it calls to you day and night. Come away, return home to me. Take my hand in the cool twilight. For you are a fairy child, born in the heart of wildness, and the ocean's wave singing your name, Oscar, fairy child. The tale of your beginnings has been lost on the wind, yet it haunts me day and night. So I watch and I wait till dreaming brings you here. Take my hand in the cool twilight, for you are my fairy child. In you lies the heart of wildness, and I'll carry you home across the wild ocean's foam, my Oscar, fairy child, my Oscar, fairy child.
Wow. And I heard you sing that at the gathering in the town hall in Glastonbury. Oh my God, that is just so beautiful. Are you going to produce an album?
Oh my God, I don't know. I think that the thing I'd love to do for my bardic offering when I eventually get there, I'd love to do. So I've already done maybe 4 different songs for different ceremonies at winter solstice, and I would love to maybe do a Wheel of the Year kind of ceremonial things that could be used by people in ceremonies. Maybe I feel like I feel like kind of calling that would be it. Thank you very much. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I want to do lots of creative things, but I want to keep writing poetry and just do that.
Tina wants to sing that to her son. Can you purchase it anywhere?
You can't, but I'll put a recording or a link to where do I have it? I think I have it on my Instagram, so I'll put a link to that, and then
what's your Instagram called?
I think it's just Jennifer Kaan, Jennifer Kaan.
Yeah.
So my surname is O'Neill Kaan, but I have the short.
Okay, so I'll just put that on so you can find it there. Brilliant.
Thanks very much. But yeah,
it's now, and somebody else says so. Gabrielle, you can self-produce nowadays, Jennifer. It's less complicated than in the past.
And self-publish and self-motivate and everything else. Eventually, I feel content that I'm doing the work of the bard in whatever small way. So it's
well, I mean, your voice is just haunting. I mean, I love it. I mean, I've heard you sing so many times. It's like, oh, can't get enough of it. So Pauline says, my cat and I loved your singing. Thank you so much.
I'm glad your cat is content.
Somebody wanted to see your cat. Is that possible?
Evie? No, like a good woman, she is not there now when you want her.
This is true. You never said. But Ricky says you can understand how she won the Andera de Gorset Bardic chair with that.
Thank you very much.
You didn't tell us that. Thanks, Ricky.
Thanks, Ricky. I did. I won it 2 years, which was amazing. And Kerry Lee, who apart from everything else is the most amazing artist, made this beautiful pendant, which has like 3 rays of an Awen carved, and on the back of it carved Chief Bard of Andera. Yeah, the Andera Bard competition. Sorry. Every Imulk we have that, and it is the standard is like seriously high.
So you've won it twice.
I've won it twice, yeah. And then once you've won it, you can't enter the next year. So this year I was able to help with David Perry to select, to listen and to help judge it. It's gorgeous. If anybody is in Sussex or near there, it is an absolutely beautiful grove. So yeah, and I know how hard it is to find somewhere you connect to. Yeah, up in Longman at Wilmington. So yeah.
So Tina says that song is beautiful, as is your voice and your delivery. And of course, Ricky says you cannot hide your light under a bushel with me around to rat on you. Thank you, Ricky. That was really important. And Julia says richly deserved. Absolutely. And you never said what?
There's stuff, there's stuff. I did some stuff. But yeah. Eimear, this is just amazing. Thank you so much for having me too.
Well, it's been just a joy, and we're coming up to almost 2 hours now. Oh,
I can't believe it.
More book recommendations.
Oh God, what recommendations in general, or Druidry?
I imagine Druidry.
But also, though, apart from here's a literary one that people should read. There is a book called Once and Future Witches. It is one of the most amazing novels I've ever read in my life, and it is by It's by Alex E. Scott, maybe Alex E. something. Once and Future Witches, and it weaves ideas of three faces of kind of the goddess with old stories. Every chapter she has the idea of like hidden bits of lost magic in old snippets of nursery rhymes, and then these three sisters are brought together. It is literally stunning. So I would strongly recommend that. And then we love. I have groaning bookshelves like every member of what OBOD does is and obviously books like The Path, to Druidry, and Philip's books, and just like so many different ones. I don't always get so I always want to kind of go back and do those, because I spend so much of my job also reading literature, and particularly fantasy. My favorite period is that kind of 1880s to 1910. So I read a lot of kind of Oscar Wilde and and Gothic stuff, and then Angela Carter, revisionist fairy tales, all of those. Oh,
lovely. Julie says what are you most proud of question has been answered.
I remember what I said, but this moment right here.
Well, I think that your singing just sums it up. So we've gone over our 2 hours. So it has been and we could stay talking.
I can't believe how easy it is. I asked Paddy. I said, "Well, Paddy, I can't believe how long it is. There's no way." And he said, "Believe me, once you get going, it's like Eimear's really good at this. Like he'll just keep going for ages." So yeah.
Well, it's been just such a joy. And so Gabriella says voting for Ostara on the favorite festival.
My favorite festival.
Thank you, Gabriella. It's funny. When I asked, this is the last question. Thank you for the reminder. I had almost forgotten. What is your favorite season, and what is your favorite festival to mark the wheel of the year? Gabriella likes to vote, and she gets very frustrated because she doesn't get it right for some reason. So
there are two that I adore, but in terms of maybe I like them equally. I love Imbolc. I really strongly connected. I didn't even talk about any of this. Sorry. So I'm from Dundalk, which is in County Louth, and that is right beside Faughart, where Bridget the Saint was from. Obviously echoing a much older kind of goddess. And so I always loved it. We would go there. There's an ancient spring there. We'd kind of visit that. So I always had that in my mind, but I always felt there was something kind of more to it. And it's always at that time of year with the Anderida, for example, Bardic Festival. I always feel this awakening surge of Awen, of creative energy. And for me, I really resonate with the energy of kind of Bridget and that time of year, and that notion of a kind of spark that's been hidden in the darkness and now is coming out. I absolutely find that so powerful at the start of every year. I always have a sense of being renewed with that. So I love that. But I also love Samhain. Increasingly, especially more as I get older, and I suppose release some of those ideas of like the fear and the darker aspect of, not darker, but like the shadow to the light type thing. I love it. I mean, we always celebrated, Samhain or Halloween in Ireland with many of the things that I would do now anyway. But now I love attuning to the liminality of that. I mean, and I remember Dr. Karen Ward, who's amazing, who's done so many, and she spoke one time at a gathering and was talking about the Idir Áit, the in between places and times. And I think in Druidry in general, to me, the liminal is just one of the most powerful concepts, tapping into that. So finding places and seasons where you have that sense of thinness in the veil. I love that. So it's a joint answer. Imbolc/Samhain.
Oh, brilliant. Listen, it's been such a joy talking to you. And we're going to have to say goodnight. So I'm going to send you through the veil. Stay where you are, because then we can look at some of the comments, and I'll just say goodbye to everybody.
I will. Thank you so much, everybody. And thank you so much, Eimear, for having me. It's been absolutely a once in a lifetime experience. Thank you.
Oh, well, we maybe have you back again.
Maybe, or maybe twice. Yeah.
So, thank you so much for being here today and for your great conversations, or sorry, your great comments. It's just been an absolute joy being here and being back. And I look forward to seeing you next week for another Fireside Chat. And until then, be well, and hopefully you enjoy, for those of you who have nice warm weather, and others of you, let's hope you can cope with the heat. So until then, we'll see you next week. Slán go fóill. Iawa. And enjoy the rest of your day, because I mean, I'm here in the evening, but many of you, it's in the morning or in the afternoon, or you may be watching a recording. So be well until we meet again. All right, slán.